So this video is about creating and working with arrays of numbers. So what are arrays? An array is a list of number or expression that can be arranged in horizontal rows or vertical. So today we're going to use MATLAB to do some calculations on array. We are going to learn how to create row and column vectors. They're also called vectors when you have an array of one row or column. We are going to learn how to create these arrays and how to do simple arithmetic operation on them. So before showing you with some examples, I want to let you know that when I talked about calculations in MATLAB, I talked about arithmetic operators, and I said that, okay, if you want to do multiplication, a star is the sign, this is the sign for division, backslash, and then exponentiation is shown with caret. So when you work with arrays, you do term by term multiplication, right? Because you have terms inside. So when you work with arrays, you have to do term by term multiplication, term by term division, term by term exponentiation. So in order to do that, what you do in order to let MATLAB know that you're doing term by term, you put a dot before that. It will become clear when I do some examples, but just to give you a general idea, when you see a dot before, that means that you're working with arrays and matrices and not just numbers. So I'm going to do some examples, as I said, on MATLAB to show you how to create an array first, and then we do some simple calculations. So let's go to MATLAB. Now, this is a command window. I'm just going to type it here. Now, I want to make an array with, what I want to do is create an array in MATLAB that is horizontal. For example, it has 3 members, and I'm going to name it X. So this is an array. This is put in a variable called X, and it has 3 members, 1, 2, 3. So very easy. In MATLAB, you just type it out like this. X is equal to 1, a space 2, a space 3. Then you close it up. That's it. Press enter. Now you have an array with 3 members. So this is a row vector or an array with 3 elements. Now what about a column vector with 3 elements? If I want to create the same thing using, just change it to a column vector, you put semicolon in between. So now you have 1, 2, 3 like this. You can add or subtract 2 vectors of the same size, but if you go to my video about implicit expansion, I recommend that you watch that after this video to see that what implicit expansion means and how you can get different results. And I don't want you to get surprised. You have to know the concept of implicit expansion as a beginner. So when you see something, it doesn't surprise you. So you have to know how MATLAB works. Let's me multiply x to y. Let me create another, maybe another row vector. So 2, 1, 3. Okay. Now I want to multiply, or I can multiply or divide the elements of 2 same size vectors term by term with the array operator. So if I want to multiply 2 vectors or 2 arrays, what I had was, for example, X is 1, 2, 3, and then I had Z, which was 2, 1, 0, and I want to multiply them using MATLAB. So you can multiply the elements by of the two size, same size vector term by term. That means that multiply this to that, this to that, this to that by using the dot operator. So if you want to do that, you have to put dot and then multiplication z. So if you do that, you have term by term multiplication. So what you get should be 2, 2, 0. Okay. So, and then you can put it in another variable. Let's call it, for example, a. So a is 2, 2, 0. If you do that, it's term by term multiplication. So let's try it out. So that's my x. Actually, I changed my x. So I want this x. Okay, so x times z would be a. So a is x dot star z, and okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3. This is different from my example. I had 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0. 1, 2, 3, and z2, 1, 0. Okay, I'm going to change it so 2, 1, 0. So I get the same result as my notes. So now a is x. So I get 2, 2, 0, exactly what I got here, 2, 2, 0. Just a comment here. If you want to see because whatever you type here is getting saved unless you clear the memory. How do you clear the memory? You type clear. Before I clear everything, if you press the sign scroll up, everything that you typed will show up here. So if you want, for example, to see what is X, you can click on it and press enter and it will come again. If you want to clear everything, you just type clear all. So you see your workspace vanished and everything got deleted. So you don't have these. If you type X, nothing will come up. Undefined function or variable X. If you want to clean your screen, just type CLC and everything will go. Now, going back to arrays, what if you want to multiply, for example, let's say my A is the A that I had was 2, 2, 0, right? And if you put a semicolon at the end, you don't see it again when you type it out, okay? And then I want to multiply 2 to this array. So 2 times A should give you 4, 4, 0 because it's going to get multiplied. So multiplying a vector with a scalar doesn't need any special operation. You don't need to put a dot before multiplication sign here. You don't need a dot when you multiply a number to a vector. By default, it will multiply to each element. Now, okay, so that's good. You might ask, okay, what if I have an array that has some kind of a pattern? For example, I want to type this 2.5, for example, then I'm going to add 2.5 again, so it's 5. I'm adding 2.5 against 7.5. I'm going to add 0.5 again, which is 2.5 again, which is 10. So I have an array now that has kind of a pattern. So instead of typing it, you can create a vector with 5 elements that you have here. And you can tell MATLAB to linearly space them by using the keyword linspace. So if you have a situation like this, that you have some kind of pattern, instead of typing every element in your array, just type, for example, I'm going to call my array X is equal to, you can use this keyword, linspace, and then say, okay, go from 0, finish to 10, and I have 5 elements. And it's going to space them out equally for you. So 0 to 2 to 10, and then divide it by 5, and you should get, yes. So I typed it wrong, lean space. So you see you get the same array. So that means go from 0 to 10, and what I want you to do is linearly space them between 0 and 10. So you get a nice equal distances between two numbers. So this is to make your life easier when you type an array. Instead of typing each element, you can use line space or linear space. Okay. And then another thing I want to tell you is that trigonometric functions like sine, cosine, etc., as well as elementary like math functions, they can be operated on vectors term by term. So if you, for example, want to take a sinus of each element, you can say y is equal to sine of x, and it will take each element, sine of each element in your vector, okay? So any trigonomic function, they operate on vectors term by term. There is another keyword. You get comfortable as we do lots of examples throughout this course. For example, keyword skew or SQRT stands for square root. Okay, so if you want to take a square root of each element, you say, okay, z is equal to SQRT, and then put x inside. It will take a square root of each element in your vector x. So you get something like this. So you can do exponential, log of each element. Just remember it's element by element when you have an array, something like this. And then, so now you have an array. If you want to multiply to, for example, z to y, then you have to use dot. So z, because if you want to multiply element by element, y, then you get 0 times 0, this times that, this times that, this times that, this times that. That's why you get negative. Just be careful. If you don't put a dot, you get an error. Why? Because you're multiplying a 1 by 5 matrix to a 1 by 5 matrix. And mathematically, it doesn't make sense. You cannot do that, right? You can multiply, for example, 1 by 5 matrix to 5 by something else, right? So you know when you multiply matrices, you cannot multiply 1 by 5 to 1 by 5, right? Because this always should be equal to this. The number of columns of the previous matrix should be equal to the number of rows. So you can't do that. That's why if you do that, you'll get an error. Error using multiplication, incorrect dimensions for matrix multiplication. Check the number of columns in the first matrix matches the number of rows in the second matrix. And then it tells you to perform element-wise multiplication, use dot star. So what we talked about in this video what you should get from this video is that how to create an array. So you know that you can have horizontal or vertical. If you want to type horizontal in MATLAB, it's easy, you just type it out exactly like this. If you want to put it in a variable, you can put it in a variable and name it something. So that's it. But for if you want to have something vertically, an array, then if you have 1, 2, 3 in MATLAB, you have to type, let's call this y, y is equal to 1 semicolon 2 semicolon 3. And if you don't want to see the output, you put semicolon at the end. So this is the general idea of how to create arrays in MATLAB. And then you saw that if you want to multiply element by element of two matrices that have the same size, for example, 5, 6, 7, and if you want to do that, all you have to do is type x times y, but you need to put a star, a dot before your star. So same thing for division. If you want to divide them term by term, you have to put a dot. So whenever you see a dot, that means term by term, term, first term, second term, third term. It will do it term by term. Same thing for exponentials. So if you put x dot caret y, it will take each element of x and power of this term. So it will be 1 power of 5, 2 power of 6, 3 power of 7. So if for some kind of application you need to do that, then you put dot.